Okay, one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Alien Romulus. I'm a massive fan of the Alien franchise and I've just been so freaking excited for this movie. I've seen it twice now. I saw it once on its release day and again today. I had to watch it the second time before sharing my thoughts with you guys because the first time around I was just so awestruck by what it was that I was seeing on the screen, just in how Fede Álvarez had brought this world to life. It was like being transported back to being a kid again watching those original movies. So the movie follows a group of downtrodden young space colonists in pursuit of better life conditions who encounter hostile creatures while scavenging a derelict space station. Where Alien Romulus fits within the timeline of the Alien movies, it fits right in between the first movie from 1979, Alien, and James Cameron's Aliens, and I believe it's around 5 years after the game Alien Isolation. If you've never played Alien Isolation, please do. It's an absolutely it's an amazing game and it's an absolutely terrifying experience. Like, the first Alien movie scared the life out of me as a kid. But as you grow older and you sort of, if you're someone like myself who really kind of loves filmmaking and really studied how movies are made, you kind of become desensitized to the horror within these films. But Alien Isolation took me straight back to being a kid again, and I've played it a couple of times now, and it is one of the most terrifying, anxiety-inducing experiences I've ever had while playing a video game in my adult life. So yes, I highly recommend Alien Isolation. And before I get going with the review, I just want to give a spoiler warning here. There are going to be spoilers that I'm going to touch on throughout this review. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, please stop watching, go and watch the movie first, then come back. With that being said,
the emergency disrupt system is now activating.
So, from the 20th Century Fox logo fading into the opening right through to the end, this movie had me grinning. The first scene, the first moments of this movie, I was just in awe at what Fede Álvarez had crafted, in how he'd managed to capture the essence, the tone, the atmosphere and aesthetic of those original movies beautifully, and in a way that felt natural. It felt right. Like, the opening scene in this movie was creepy, it was eerie, and I just adored the lighting, the costume design, the set design, the sound design. Everything felt like Alien, and like I said, it gave me goosebumps just how that scene played out. And it's accompanied by this haunting score by a Benjamin Wallfish, which I absolutely adored. It elevates the creepiness and eeriness within this moment. And it's a beautiful blend of the previous scores from those previous films that we've all come to recognise. And it's done in a way that's very subtle and just does a fantastic job, along with all the other elements like the lighting, the set design, the costume design and the sound design, at transporting me back to being a kid again watching those original movies. And as a fan of the franchise, I felt like I was home again. And I just want to touch on the score again for a moment, because when it comes to callbacks, and this movie is full of them and they don't always work, but when it does succeed is through its music, through the beautiful score by Benjamin Wallfish, because he just manages to really sort of successfully weave the already established and familiar sounds through his own original score, and he does it in a way that feels natural and right. It reminds me of what's come before, but it doesn't throw me out of the experience. In fact, it enhances the experience and elevates the tension and the horror and the creepiness within this experience. But at the same time, it retains that very familiar Alien DNA. And for me, when it comes to callbacks within this movie, that's where this film really succeeds with doing that. You know, wherever you refer to them as member berries, It's all done through the score. And then you've got the other type of callback or member berry, and that is when you've got characters who repeat famous iconic lines that have come from previous movies. I just don't get it. When you've got your own original character with its own personality, I really don't understand why you have to repeat a famous iconic line from another character in another movie. It just never makes sense to me, and it can throw you out. Luckily here with Romulus, it didn't really sort of throw me out of the experience. It did make my eyes roll, because I'm like, why are you doing this? And on second viewing, this is one particular moment with our character Andy, and he says,
"Get away from her, you bitch!"
And the first time round, I hated it. But on the second time round, I picked up on the reasoning behind why he says it, due to an interaction he has with another character earlier on in the film. And so as a result, it kind of worked a little better for me. But at the same time, I just don't get it. You know, you've got your own original character with its own personality. Let that character shine and become its own thing. And someone that we can associate for its own reasons and for whatever it is this character doesn't say. Let's not rely on what's too heavily on what's come before. So yes, one of my major gripes out of the way with there, it wasn't enough to take me out of the experience. You know, Fede Álvarez does a fantastic job at immersing you into this world, down to how he crafts it. Unfortunately, we do get a couple of those callbacks that really did make my eyes roll. Practical effects. I absolutely adored the practical effects within this movie, from the creatures to the sets to the spaceships, you know, where you've got actual models, and it just looks and feels so much more real than it would have been if it was a CGI creation. And I just feel like it's through the use of heavy practical effects that kind of elevates the stakes and the horror within the movie. Because everything feels like it's lived in, like you've actually got living, breathing people and creatures within this world, and it's all as a result of not relying too heavily on CGI. And seeing as we're on the subject of CGI, the CGI is pretty good here within this movie. But there is this one particular moment where it really didn't work for me, and I just don't understand why they went so heavy on CGI within this particular moment, because I feel like practical effects like a model or a puppet or even some actor with some prosthetics or just like a mask on maybe would have worked a hell of a lot better. And it's when we get a very familiar character return. So major spoiler here. Again, if you haven't watched the movie yet, stop now. And with that being said, we've got Ian Holm returning, well, his likeness anyway, as the synthetic that we were first introduced to back in Alien 1979. This obviously being a different synthetic. His name is Rook, but it's the same model, and I feel like by having this model return made absolute sense for me, and it was just great to see Ian Holm again as this synthetic in live action. This likeness and how they brought Ian Holm to life, it didn't quite work. It was a little bit jarring, and there was just something about the lighting in this scene that just, it kind of really stood out, and I just don't understand why they just didn't go down more of a practical route with this. Like, they could have had an actor wearing prosthetics or makeup just to make him look perhaps similar to Ian Holm maybe, so we would have understood that this is the same model. And so, yeah, maybe they did, and maybe it just looked too goofy and it just didn't work. But for me, these moments with a certain character didn't always work. In certain angles and certain lighting, it did. But for the most part, it was a little bit jarring. Performances. I liked all of the performances within this movie. I feel like all of the cast give solid, relatable performances. But the standouts for me were Cailee Spaeny as Rain and David Jonsson as Andy, this synthetic. And they've got this brother and sister relationship, which is the beating heart of this story. it's a kind of it's very relatable due to the sort of the desires of these characters and what it is they're aiming to sort of achieve. And I feel like it's a story that we can all relate to, maybe to a degree, though I felt like at times it does kind of get lost among the noise. And when it comes to all of the other characters within this group, even though I liked what the cast were doing with these characters, I felt like they were perhaps a little bit underdeveloped. Like, I don't feel like the dynamic within this group of characters was quite as strong as what we've had, say, from Alien in 1979 and James Cameron's Aliens. But it still worked for what I felt Fede Álvarez was trying to tell when it came to this story, which deep down does have this kind of very human, relatable desire to it. So if you were to ask me, is this a scary film? Is Alien Romulus scary? I couldn't answer that, because personally I just feel like I've been desensitized to it, and I've seen these movies from such a young age that it's not going to have the same effect on me as it would if you've never seen these movies before, perhaps. I don't know. But what I can say without a doubt, it's definitely creepy in places and eerie, and there are moments which gave me chills. And I feel like you do get a flavour of every Alien movie within you, and I get why a lot of people have referred to Romulus as being the greatest hits of Alien, because in many ways this movie is structured just like the space station, you could say, Romulus and Remus, in two parts. Like, the first act or the first portion of this movie is more Alien. It's more in the vein of that kind of horror and the tension and the suspense, and it gets your heart racing, it gets your heart pumping, especially that chestburster scene. Just the way in which that plays out was superb. But then as you go into the second act and going into the third act, you sort of transition more into James Cameron's Aliens, and it's not really jarring. It didn't throw me out. But it depends what you're looking for with your Alien movie. Like, are you looking more for Ridley Scott's Alien, or Alien 3 even, more that kind of horror vibe? Or are you looking for more of the kind of the thrills and the excitement and the fun of Aliens? And I feel like this movie has them both, and it works quite well together. Though what I will say, when it comes to a couple of the action set pieces, even though they're fun and they're thrilling, the way in which they would play out at times I found were a little bit clunky. Like, they almost lacked a momentum or this kind of kinetic energy that I felt like certain moments needed. I don't know if that's just me, maybe, I don't know. And then you've got a third act, which is very Alien Resurrection, which I think they could have pushed it a little further when it comes to how twisted and creepy and sort of gross that moment is. I think they could have really have pushed that perhaps a little bit further, but again, that could be just down to how desensitized I am to the whole thing. But it does tie in nicely then with the prequels. Like, I felt like how they tied Alien Romulus into Prometheus was really well done, but it still kind of reminded me how I felt about Ridley Scott sort of exploring the mystery of the space jockey, because for me personally, I felt like it's that mystery aspect of Alien is one of the major attractions to this series, and it sort of elevates the horror. I really don't feel like we needed the mystery of that spacecraft and that entity inside the spacecraft explored. I felt like, yes, it can be touched on in sequels, and I just feel like, yeah, we didn't particularly need it, even though I do like the prequels for different reasons. I'm not someone who hates the prequels, by the way, but I do personally feel like we didn't need the mystery of this creature explored. It's the mystery that for me elevates the horror and the attraction to this series. Though what I will say is how they tie this in to Prometheus and what we get with that third act, even though I'd say I'm 50-50 on it, it works and I liked it. I just thought how they tie it into Prometheus, I thought it was done in a clever way. So for me personally, Alien Romulus has rejuvenated the Alien franchise. It's the jump start that the Alien franchise needs. What this movie did was take me back to being a kid again, when I was first introduced to movies like 1977 Star Wars and Alien, and just go, wow. And just sort of be in awe at what is coming to life on the screen. This is good old-fashioned filmmaking. But it's not one without its flaws. Not everything within its story worked for me. But I had a hell of a good time. And like I said at the beginning of this review, as an Alien fan, I felt like I was home again, and I'm looking forward to the future of this franchise. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Alien Romulus, and I will be giving Alien Romulus a 7.5 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Alien Romulus, but what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? And please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. I'm hoping to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm not quite sure I'm going to make it, but I think I'm going to come close. But a big thank you to all of those that have subscribed recently and over the last couple of years. It means an awful lot, and I do have so much fun in sharing with you guys my love of film and TV. And so yeah, enough rambling on from me. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.